Well, you are in for a treat. It has been, where's the time gone the last few years? When I started doing interviews, Ian Donaldson was one of my first interviews that I really kind of done um, before before doing all this, really. And we have him now on my line. Welcome, Ian.
Hello, Danny. How are you?
I'm good. Long time no see, or long time no hear. How are we?
Oh, I'm really good. We were just talking beforehand, and it's been a couple of years since the last time we spoke. And I wonder where the time's gone as well. Does that mean we're grown ups? It just seems to have flown by.
Yeah, time does seem to go through your hands like sand when you get older, don't it?
I'm afraid so.
Yes, it's one of them things. But I just wanted to get you back just to talk more about your H2O and what you've been up to.
Thank you. I'm happy to chat anytime. You know that.
Great. So I'm going to throw it back again. A couple of
Mhm.
questions I missed out from last time. H2O, how did you conjure up the name for the band?
It was really difficult because there was six of us, and every time somebody would come up with something, everybody else would veto it, or half would say yes. I remember us sitting in a cafe, and we really had to come up with an idea. And somebody said there was a fire extinguisher on the wall, and somebody said, "How about CO2?" And then somebody said, "How about H2O?" And that was the only time we all said yes at the same time. So we just grabbed the H2O and ran with it.
And I dreamed to dream. Sorry, I dreamed to sleep. Sleep to dream. Sorry.
Yeah,
That's your second single, but people overlook Hollywood Dream as well.
yeah. Hollywood Dream came out on an indie label we had called Spock Records after Spock from Star Trek. That came out at about the start of 1981, and we sold a couple of thousand copies. That's what got RCA, EMI, and London Records interested in the band in the first place because they heard that we were selling records in record stores. Because at that time, record stores would take indie singles because it was really big kind of news at the time. Loads of punk singles, new wave singles were all being pressed by bands and artists all over the place. So it was really healthy in those days, and that's how we got started. And it was a couple of years later when we recorded "A Dream to Sleep," and that came out as the second single.
2023, 40 years anniversary. Congratulations of the
Wow.
record. Sorry to
Sounds
put.
like that, Danny. It sounds like forever sometimes, and other times it sounds like it's just like yesterday.
Mm.
Honestly, it's either one or the other.
And to celebrate this, you got an acoustic candlelit. Well, in my eyes, it's like a candlelight version.
It is. It's a kind of my daughter plays cello on it. We've got acoustic guitars and we've got two harpists playing as well. And it just seemed, if I'd written the song now, how would I have recorded it? And probably like this, just a bit more authentic. At that particular time, the record that we made was quite unusual. We were using samples and sounds, and it was very kind of off the time, quite experimental. And I think just this time around, it was more kind of natural, more kind of organic, as they call it nowadays.
Whether it's true or not, I did read somewhere you might have been influenced by Yazoo, Only You, which came out a year before.
Absolutely true. I was watching Top of the Pops, and Yazoo came on, and they were number one. And I thought that's a great tune. There's just two of them. That's a great tune. It's really simple, deceptively simple. It's hard to write a song as good as that and be simple at the same time like that. And I just started writing down the lyric for "I Dream to Sleep." Took it in the next day to rehearsals, and my writing partner Ross Alcock, he played keyboards in the band. We sat down, and 20 minutes later, the song was finished. It was really quick,
Mm.
and that was the influence. That was the influence. Yeah.
Orchestral manoeuvres in the dark, a bit of souvenir maybe, influences in there.
You know, But I think that we all kind of like David Bowie and Roxy Music and those kind of bands, and I think that when you listen to how things were put together, I think there are some coincidences. I think if you listen to Heaven 17 and a few others, I think we all had the same record collection when we were kids, and we were all living in different cities. It's not like nowadays where you put something up on the internet or you put it on Facebook or whatever, everybody knows it in 5 minutes. At that particular time, we were all kind of working in our own areas, our own cities, with our own record collections. And I think some of it is coincidental, because I hadn't really heard. I'd heard heard Electricity and White Light. What was the other one called? White Light.
Is it messages?
Yes, I think yes, it was really early, but I didn't hear. Yeah, I wasn't. We weren't trying to copy them per
Mm,
se. I don't think. But coincidences, and that's why we kind of. I remember a funny story, Danny. This is a bit off the wall here, but I remember when we made the last H2O record, which was a song called Blue Diamond. I remember being in Good Earth Studios, which was owned by Tony Visconti. So Tony Visconti came into the room and he was sitting watching, and we were doing it with a guy called Pete Walsh. He was producing it. He produced New Gold Dream, the album for Simple Minds. And I remember when I was doing the vocal in the booth, I remember the engineer looking at me, and then I seen him picking up the phone. It was one of those old-fashioned phones. I seen him making a call, and he was on the phone to somebody while I was singing. And they held the phone up to the speaker while I was singing. And I came in and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "All my friends in a band." And I just wanted to tell him that there was somebody in here that sounded like him. I said, "Who's your friend?" And it turned out to be the guy in furniture. You remember? You must be out of your brilliant mind.
yeah.
And I think he had the same record collection as well.
Mm,
I think we
mm.
all sounded the same.
And in Dream to Sleep, you do
Uh-huh.
name check David Bowie with the Young Americans.
I do. I think that's touch to the sound of Young Americans, or am I still too young? Um, that was one of the albums. Everybody loves Ziggy. I love Ziggy as well,
Mm.
but I think Young Americans was so good as well. It was really unusual, and that was the kind of thing that was on my turntable at the time, and it just seemed to percolate up and become part of the lyric.
Mm. Now, some people hate the term new romanticism, but that's an art in itself. When you look at the lyrics, there's kind of, well, a romanticism to it. Would you say there's a touch of that in I Dream to Sleep?
I think there is. I think it's a kind of prose. It's a bit like kind of street poetry or something. I think, but none again because we were all working in our own cities, making our own records. We had no idea what a new romantic was.
Mm,
It just happened to be that we made records at the same time as the press gave that kind of music, whatever that was, the name New Romantic. I still don't really know if we were New Romantics or
mm,
not. But I don't mind the title. I mean, it's all about the music in the end up. That's the thing that outlives us all or doesn't. And fortunately for H2O, then I Dream to Sleep is one of those songs that still gets played all
mm.
the time. So, I'm grateful for that. That's no problem.
What's the feeling when you hear your song on the radio or when you see someone mentions it to you? They've just heard it. That brings back a lot of memories. What's that feeling like?
You know what? It's amazing. It's you know when you consider where we came from. Look, we're working class boys from. I come from a really tough area in Glasgow called Govan, and at that particular time there was nothing going on. Punk had just happened, and we were all kind of angry young men and women. Didn't know what to do with our lives. To get from there to sign to RCA and then to be on Top of the Pops with people like Elton John. I mean, how can that not be a brilliant thing and a brilliant moment? And whenever I think about it, when anybody brings it up, it always makes me smile because it's virtually impossible to do that. I mean, when you consider how many people made records, even record labels were spending loads of money on acts that never had a hit record, and we had a couple of hit records, which was amazing. So I remember, it's become a really close friend, the song, and whenever I perform it, whenever I sing it, I always sing it like it's really fresh in my mind, and I'm grateful to the song, but it's a bit of magic, really.
Mm. The early 80s, a lot of competition as well. To get into the top
Yeah,
20 is a very
yeah.
satisfactory place to be. Even 17, to get the amount of records sold then would easily make number one now.
Oh, over, for 10 weeks in a row, honestly, because at that particular time, remember when Dream to Sleep charted, it was in the top 40 for 16 weeks. So it sold an awful lot of records. So it went slowly up and it went slowly back down again. And you're right. I think Top of the Pops kind of lost its magic a little bit when drum and bass kind of happened, and those records were flying into the chart, being number one, and flying back out again. And you were selling like 5 or 10,000 copies at that particular point. But I mean, in the height of glam, you were selling 1 million singles a week to go to number one. Even at ours, it was like 50,000 a week to get to number one. And so it's satisfying times. Yeah,
Um, and sometimes it's not all about the number one in itself. The volume of records sold is perhaps more pleasing.
it is. It's about you know but people say it could have went higher. It could have. It didn't. But that doesn't matter because many people contact me and say it's their favourite record of the 80s. In fact, the last time I played in Paisley, just outside of Glasgow, and a couple came in early at the sound check, and I went up and said hello, and the guy went to the toilet, and his wife said he's never seen H2O, but he's got all your records, and I don't want him to know that I've told you this, but I Dream to Sleep is the song he once played at his funeral.
Wow,
Now
that's yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? That's a good
oh,
feeling.
it is. That's amazing. I mean, it's worth making a record for that alone. If somebody really thinks that much about it, it's great. I've got no regrets whatsoever. We could have done more, Danny, but it didn't happen. I'm making records now. It's okay. It's all right.
That's good. That's good. What I like about the old days, you used to have a B-side. What's happened to B-sides these days, or the flip side, as they say?
Yeah, I mean, it gave acts the opportunity to do something a little bit more experimental. I remember first hearing that when I used to buy Sweet records. You would always have the pop song on the A side, and then you would have something close to heavy rock on the B side, which was written by the band. Nowadays, it's called dropping a song, isn't it? It's not even like dropping a single or releasing a single. It's like dropping a song. And it's a shame because the B-side was always worth listening to. You're absolutely right. But times move on, just not all for the better, but that's what it is.
They do. And of course, on the B-side, we have Born to Win. I had a listen to it. And it reminds me of like a ska, band, like the Specials meets Haircut 100 in a way.
It does. You're absolutely right. It's kind of a little bit jazz funk as well. Yeah. The thing about that is that was going to be the A side, and Dream to Sleep was going to be B side right up to the time of pressing. And the only reason why they flipped it was because RCA had sent the record out to radio, and the radio disc jockeys at that time they wanted to play the A side. They wanted to play the B side, which was "I Dream to Sleep." So they quickly flipped it, and it became the A side, which I'm glad because much as I like Burn to Win, it's not the same kind of song at all as Dream to Sleep. So happy accident.
I'm just going to pause the interview now because I'm going to play Born to Win now.
Thank you.
So I'm talking now with Ian Donaldson on my Donaldson radio show. We've talked more in depth about Dream to Sleep, how it's kind of changed your life. And in this interview now, we're just going to kind of still talk about that. I wanted to ask you, do you still keep in touch with your fellow H2O bandmates at all?
Hardly ever see any of them. We all kind of split up. The thing was, we weren't friends beforehand. I mean, a lot of bands are friends and then they stay with the band, and that's a different kind of bond. With the band, I met Kenny at college, and we brought in his friend, which was the keyboards player. We met the saxophone player Colin at a gig, and it was a bit like that. So, funnily enough, though, my old writing partner Ross, he's making a solo album at the moment, and he invited me along to sing on an H2O song that didn't actually get released. It's a song called what's it called? We talking If the World Falls Apart, and that's the first time I'd sung it in about 30 years, and that was great to catch up. But the rest of the guys I haven't seen at all. I don't even know where they are.
And you released one album, if I'm correct, it's called Faith, and it has become a collector's item. If you look on eBay, it's really rare and it's selling quite well priced.
It's a shame I didn't have about 20 of those under the bed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some, and the CD. There was a CD came out on Cherry Pop, which is a subsidiary of Cherry Red Records in 2009, and that's going for like a couple £100 as well. You can't get that one either. So again, that's really satisfying because I'm a collector as well, and it's nice to think that people value the record that much. And I dream to the original Hollywood Dream. That's going for a few £100 as well. So yeah, nice,
It's really good. I keep using the word refreshing, but it's really refreshing to see vinyl resurging, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's brilliant.
And Mirrorball as well. That has become a classic in its own right now, hasn't it?
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, listen, Danny, it's not false when I say this, but it never seems to amaze me at how things happen in rock and roll. Really, You're right. It's that was a song that Alan McGee picked up on, who originally started the band with Alan McGee of Oasis fame and Creation Records, and he heard that on the radio about 3 years ago when it came out, and he contacted me and said he really liked the record. We got together, and he's put my records out since then. It's strange times.
I'm going to admit, when I went shopping or when I was walking to the shops, I kind of had it going around in my head. It's catchy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And again, it was about the 70s when we were kids, like, all being about, it was always the glitter ball. That was about the only light they had in the ceiling. It was two pin spots on the glitter ball. Nowadays, when you go to a club, it's like, it's like Star Trek Enterprise, it's
sticky dance floors and everything back then, weren't there? And glitter balls.
Yeah.
Those are the days. And in the 70s, great Scottish music scene, like the Bay City Rollers.
Alex Harvey, also Marmalade. There was loads and loads. I think there's always been it's been a bit like Liverpool. I think that, there's loads of similarities. We like to sing, we like the football, we like to drink. There's two big football teams, we like singing, and it's never really stopped. When you think of, Big Country, Simple Minds, Love and Money, Hue and Cry, the Bluebells, Charlene Spiteri, just the list goes on and on and on. And then the new batch as well, the Snuts, Lucia and the Best Boys. It just keeps on happening.
I've got a few I'm going to drop in for you as well. The Skids, Nazareth and the Average White Band. When you think of the Average White Band, you don't think they're a disco band,
wow.
do you?
Yeah, amazing records, amazing.
And I know Roxy Music was heavily influenced you over the 70s, like Virginia Plain. What a great record.
Oh, wow. Totally unique. Nothing quite like it since, or before or since. Just amazing.
Looking back in the 70s, do you think back then it was less image-led than it is now?
I think it's always been. I think pop music has always been image-led. If you think of Elvis Presley, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and then you think of David Bowie, T-Rex, and then punk. I mean, punk had its own anti-fashion. I think it's always been that. I think it's always went hand in hand. I think maybe in the late 60s there was this idea of, hippie power, when it was all about, the music and being laid back and all about love. But even those people like Jimi Hendrix and, they all had the look as well. So I think it's part of it. I don't think you can separate them.
I also read, moving on now, you recently worked with the Waterboys, or some of the members. How did that go?
That was really good. That's the group. I gave that name to the group in the Philippines. That was a young guys that I'd sent a set of songs over, 10 songs for them to learn. And then I went there last year and I played with them. They were my backing band, if you like. So I called them the Waterboys, the Filipino Waterboys, and they were great. They played all the shows with me last year, and when I go back again, we're going to do the same thing again. So they were great.
And are they the Waterboys from, like, say, the tail end of the 80s?
No. That was just the name I gave them because me being an H2O and them being, playing the songs, I just called them the Waterboys. It's not Mike Scott and the Waterboys. These young guys are from the Philippines. They live in Manila.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask as well, when you did an official solo album launch, is it From Stars We Came?
Yes.
You did it at the Webster Theatre. Is that venue still standing? And if so, what do you like about the venue?
Oh, it was amazing. Actually, it's on a place. It's in the West End. It's in a place, a street called Great Western Road, and it was an old church to begin with, and it's a bit like a really big church hall, if you like, and it's got this. But they've built a huge stage on it, and there's just a kind of magic. You can feel the history of it because the building's probably about 150 years old, and it felt really good. I did 2 nights there with the album. And that was the first time I'd played in about 10 years. Just magic nights, both of them.
And the city of Glasgow always been and played a big part of your life?
Yes. I was brought up in, as I say, in Govan, and, Glasgow's what made me, that's, there's no question of that. Yeah.
And some of the locals do say to, like, the tourists there, it reminds them of Gotham City. Perfect place to film a Batman film.
That's correct, yeah. There's been a lot. And especially in the centre of the city, there's been a lot of movies. Remember the Brad Pitt zombie movie? What was that called again? Something Z.
Mm.
Uh, they made that there as well. There's something about the architecture
Yeah.
there that lends itself to New York, really. So yeah, yeah.
Looking back as well, there's so much talent in Scotland now. It's amazing.
It,
What
it,
what
it
what
is.
what advice would you say to people now breaking into the entertainment industry?
It's a hard one, Danny.
Mm,
I'm always I'm actually loath to say anything because I remember what I was like when I was 18. I was just, for me, I was fearless and unstoppable, and just thought we're the best gang in the world. My band is the best gang in the world, and I think you have to have that, and believe. And really, the only thing I'll take some of that back when I say the only thing I would say to anyone is make the songs the best they can possibly be, and don't cut the throat of the songwriter, because a lot of time what happens is somebody in the band might shine as a songwriter and somebody might not be such a good songwriter.
mm,
Have sense and go with the songwriter. Let them write the songs. You want to write songs as well, and if it's a deal breaker for you
mm,
and you're not getting your songs out, leave the band and do your own thing.
mm,
But don't, you know be sensible about it. If it's not your bag, you can get a credit somewhere by playing in the record,
mm,
but don't cut the throat of the songwriter and ruin your chances of success.
mm,
Because that happens so many times.
mm. Wise words there. We live in a world now full of singers, but we don't live in a world full of songwriters. They are quite hard to find a good songwriter
Yeah,
these days.
they are. I think I think it's harder to write a good song nowadays anyway, because really pop music's about 70 years old now.
Mm,
It's only so many chords and so many notes, and I think it's hard to do something original.
mm,
Um, some people still can do it, but you're right. But when I listen to modern pop music
mm,
now, it's not for me. I mean, it's
mm,
written for, young people are writing
mm,
for young people,
mm,
and I'm writing for older people. And I'm writing for people that grew up with me and maybe stayed with the songs throughout their lives, or there's something they like about the 80s or the 70s or whatever. But so I write about what I know now. So, being this age, death, life, just write about things that really matter. And that's all I can do. I wouldn't know how to write for a market, if you like.
mm.
I mean, Mirrorball is about me being a kid and listening to glam rock. That's what that is. And I
Mm,
think that's why people of can relate to, because they also remember those days.
mm.
Um,
Just a couple more
mm,
questions to go. And when you listen to the radio, today's music, EDM or dance, hip hop, it heavily samples music from, say, 90s. So do you think that, it has kind of run out of chords and progressions and patterns?
Well, I think some music has. I think some music is written by, like, there's some records. There's maybe six, seven, eight, anything up to 10 writers on the song, and I don't really know how you can do that.
Mm,
I mean, if somebody said yes and somebody said no, somebody said cat, somebody said bat. I mean, I don't know how you split that up, but it's a bargain if people like it and they want to buy that record,
mm,
they want to put it on Spotify. Who am I to stand in the way?
mm,
There are still some good bands out there. I mentioned the Snuts earlier on, their band from Glasgow. They're writing great tunes.
mm,
So there are people that still want to do it.
mm,
I still believe in pop music. I
mm.
really do.
I just got a record actually, which I'm going to play on one of my shows. It's from some Glaswegian DJs actually.
Yeah,
I'll just get them up actually now. So they are from Glasgow. Uh, they're called SW3 Music, and they seem to be doing the
right.
rounds on the moment. So it's good to see bands and DJs progressing just around the country, not just London.
Excellent. I don't know who they
Mm,
are. I haven't
mm,
heard the records, but
mm,
that's excellent. Anybody, listen, anybody that can break through, anybody that even just has the balls to make a record and put it out, even just on the internet, on YouTube, fair play to them.
mm. And there's one final question here. Looking back on your career, if you had a
Hmm.
TARDIS or a chance, would you do it all over again? And if so, would you do anything different?
There's two or three pivotal moments in the life of the band where I could have made a different decision, and
Mm,
that's for certain. And maybe things could have been different,
mm,
but everything's brought me to here and to Mirrorball and making records and being happy and having a great family and still have my health. So
mm,
you know. I think that's a fair trade-off, to be honest.
Mm.
There's plenty of people that I know who are still making records, and they're basically not in the happiest of people, and they're not in the best of places. And they've given everything up for music, and they've been left with very little family life or love in their life. So I think that I've had the best of both, to be honest. So
That's good.
no, yeah,
No regrets then, as the
no,
Scott Walker
no,
says that, didn't he? Was it? And Midge-Ure, no
yes, he did.
regrets. The Walker brothers, fantastic, fantastic. Well, thanks very much for the interview. It's great to have an in-depth interview with you. I've actually split this in two parts, so part one and part two, and that's absolutely
Excellent.
great, Ian Donaldson. All the best, great catch up with you, and keep writing the music because the H2O legacy lives on, don't it?
Danny, look, as always, it's been brilliant to speak to you, and thanks for your support. Take care.
Yeah, take care, buddy.